consistency is key. Consistent creation of content will not only help in building your brand's authority, but it will improve your visibility and who interacts with your content. So I recently read, and this is according to the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor of Statistics, that 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years of being open, 45% during the first 5 years, and 65% during the first 10 years. Only 25% of new businesses will make it to 15 years or more. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but that's a mind-blowing stat for me to hear, knowing that on average, there are 4.4 million businesses that open annually in the United States every year. So, if you're watching for the first time, and chances are you are, wink, wink, because it's the very first episode, my name is Jarod Lehn, and this is Fit for Business with me, Jarod Lehn. So, who is Jarod Lehn? I'm an owner-operator of a social media marketing agency by the name of Socialtopia. We just recently hit our 6th year in business, and primarily all my team works remotely. I'm married, and I have 2 kids, and I'm a very huge fitness advocate, which you'll learn more and more as we go down the rabbit hole in these podcasts, in these shows. So, what is this podcast all about? You might be wondering. I'm glad you asked. So, it just so happens back in 2021, which was a crazy time, we actually recorded and launched 4 episodes. Yes, you heard that correctly. Just 4 episodes of a podcast. Now, the premise was somewhat the same. We actually interviewed 4 separate people, 4 separate business owners. And the name of that show, if my memory serves me correctly, was called Entrepreneur Fit. Entrepreneur Fit. And for whatever reason at the time, I predetermined, if you would, that it just wasn't in our best interest. I say our best interest, meaning the company, my family. Well, I'll be the first to admit, and I hate to admit when I'm wrong, although I will and I do, that shit does happen, and here we are today. I'm human, I make mistakes, I make the wrong call-outs, but I can't go back, to that time, and who knows where we would have been today at this point in 2024 as you're watching today. So, what are some topics that we'll be covering on the show? Fit for Business with Jarod Lehn. For starters, we're going to be talking about business entrepreneurship, of course. We'll be delving into topics such as marketing. I'm a marketer. That's what we do at our agency. We'll be talking about fitness, which is a major component of my life and this show. And then wellness as well. So those are the 4 key components that this podcast will cover. Maybe not in its entirety in every episode. We'll cover on a few topics, maybe all of them. We'll see where this goes. So again, that's going to be entrepreneurship and business, marketing, fitness, and wellness. Let's get into it. So, the intent of this show, of our show, is to bring on guests who are qualified and have expertise in these 4 core areas or buckets, however you want to preface them. So stay tuned. More to come on that. First couple of episodes, it's going to be little old me talking, spitting on these areas, spitting on those topics. So my wife, as I mentioned, I'm married, recently made a comment to me a few weeks back, which I kind of thought was cute and somewhat endearing. She was like, babe, you're kind of like a 5-year-old. Ironically, we do have a son that's 5 years old. And I was soaking it in for a moment, and I said, oh, why is that? And she's like, because, I'll say it again, you're like a 5-year-old that you feel that anyone can accomplish anything. Like our son, who's 5, could become a hockey NHL player when he gets older. I'm like, yeah, damn straight. He damn well could if that's something that he wanted to do. Now, am I saying that he will accomplish this in his lifetime? He's only 5 years old. He doesn't know what he wants out of life yet. At the same time, I will say for myself, and my family, I would never steer my son in any one direction. As he grows older, he'll show his interests, what he likes, what he dislikes, and he'll figure it out along the way. And we'll support him one way or another on what that he wants to do or become as he gets older. Now, where I was going with that, for me, primarily, I thought that quote, or what my wife said to me, was, again, cute and endearing, because for me personally, I do feel that way about people, no matter what your age is. I made a lot of changes in my life just over the last year alone, or the past 6 years, forget about it. And I say that because growing up in my childhood, when I was younger, I gave up a lot. I gave up a lot in my young adulthood, the middle background, 20 to 30 years old, maybe where it mattered the most. I gave up significantly more than I should have. But as the saying goes, would I be here today if I didn't learn all these things? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Now, going back to my statement, my opening statement about businesses that will fail within the first 2 to 5 years. Let's talk about that. So out of the 4.4 million businesses that will open up this year in 2024, this is the number. 880,000 of those businesses will not make it to 2 years. So 2026, huge number. The next, if you're looking at 5 years down the road, 1.98 million businesses will not make it to the 5th year. Huge numbers. So, where am I going with that? You're thinking to yourself, Jarod, why am I spitting these statistics? So the numbers, like I said before, are staggering high. And don't misconstrue the reasoning for me providing these details here in my podcast for those that are watching or listening. You could listen to this podcast and be like, who the fuck is this clown to tell me these numbers, these statistics? Very well so. I may agree or disagree with you. But I'll tell you this, and man, I wish back then I would have listened. Be prepared to weather the storm the first few years for those that are planning or have opened a business. And this is why I say this. This is advice I heard and I read at the time when I was planning to opening up my agency, my company. But I shook it off like it was nothing, like I normally would have back then. If you plan to open a business, you should honestly, sincerely plan to have some sort of income in your savings. So hear me out. What I'm saying, and maybe you've heard this before, I'm sure you've heard people speak about this before, whether it's a financial advisor, your mother, your father, your wife, your girlfriend, your sister, your brother, you should have, generally speaking, anywhere from 3 to 5 years of your salary saved up in savings or checking, wherever you have your money put. I'm not saying you should have it, dug up and stashed in your backyard or wherever it may be, because that's not going to cut it. But truth be told, and if you don't believe me, this is not for me to scare. This is for me to shed light on something I wish I would have done myself back then. Right? So unless you have some sort of saving grace, a nest egg, you have seed money, then you're all straight for right now. Or somebody in your family or close to you that is willing to provide to you or take care of you for these years to come. This, my friend, is the harsh and truth reality. It's a fucking reality. It's a reality check. Truth be told, and I'm not saying this applies to everyone who launches his or her business this year or who had launched their business the past year or two. You might be coming across my podcast and like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? I've already surpassed and, my EBITDA shows that I'm making profits. The margins are high. Great. You're rocking and rolling. Keep doing it. But I will say this definitely does apply to the masses. So let's talk about 2024. This will be our best year yet, right? That's what we're all saying. Tell yourself, fuck yeah, it will, because that's what I'm telling myself. So what's the landscape looking like for social media marketing for your business this year? I wonder. Do you wonder? Chances are, hopefully, you've rolled out and launched your strategy for the new year, or maybe you're working on it at this very moment. Well, for starters, and don't take this lightly, if you're not doubling down, yes, doubling down on your content efforts, stop right now what you're doing in this very moment and come up with that strategy. Come up with a strategy to double down on your content for your business. Because, my friends, if you are not doing that, make no mistake, your competition is 1,000%. And now I'm not saying you need to watch closely to what your competition is doing on social media with their marketing efforts. Some may agree with that statement. A lot of people, may disagree with that very well statement. For me personally, I really don't pay attention to what my competition or people that I could compete with in the market are doing. I don't care. They do them. I stay on my bandwidth. I stay up to date on trends, what's going on in the market, what's going on with marketing, and how it applies to like what we're doing. And I think that's a good tactic for people that are watching this video as well. Doubling down on your content strategy. Why is this important, and how is it going to help your business? And what can it do for your business? Well, for starters, if you're not pushing out any content, that's scary, number one. If you're putting out mediocre content, okay, at least you have something going for the business, for a strategy. But what's holding you back? It's the sense of like you're going to be concerned of what your current customer base says, people that are close to you. Well, why is this person posting so much? I don't want to be pinpointed or categorized in that person or business that all they do is they pop up on my feed and they're continuing posting content. Who the fuck cares what those people think? What do they owe to you and your business and what your goals are this year? Truth be told, if people that are close to you, care about your business, they should be happy that you're taking the necessary steps, because this is where your strategy needs to be secured and achieved in this new year. So what I say, take it back to the basics, baby. Your content is the backbone. It's the backbone, right? And should be for your marketing efforts starting today, going throughout the rest of the year. What I always tell to our prospects and clients of our agency, you should always achieve to have a multi-channel digital approach. So this is what it can do for you. And let me double down on that, right? Let me tell you what I'm talking about. A multi-channel digital approach. In layman terms, let's say you're a home service provider. Let's niche it down. Let's say you're a general contractor and you are in the Connecticut, let's say Hartford, Connecticut market. Well, let's say your territory, you will, travel for jobs 60 miles out of the Hartford, Connecticut market, right? I'm just using this as an example as I lived in the Northeast territory. So what am I saying with this multi-channel approach? This means, and not limited to where you should be, you should have a strategy that aligns with this, with X, okay? You should be solely active on social media, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Who's your client avatar? Where are they? Is this general contractor that I'm speaking about located, is this general contractor that I'm speaking about focusing on residential clientele? Are they more focused on commercial? Maybe it's like 70% residential, 30% commercial. And if that was the case, if that is the client that I'm working with and those are their client avatars, I'm going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, yes, you should very well be active on social media, active on those profiles, active on Google. Do a Google Max campaign, which, essentially, if you're familiar with Google Max, that is campaigning with Google search. You're advertising on Gmail. You're popping up on the 3 to 4 million types of applications that Google advertises on. You're advertising on YouTube video. So there's so many different variables here. You're advertising on Meta, like we said, when it comes to paid campaigns, organically campaigning on those platforms as well. That is what we say in the industry is a multi-channel digital approach. Now, on the flip side, I will say wholeheartedly, when I first started my agency, I frowned upon when I spoke to any business owner or potential client that was like, hey, we want to spend X money on digital, but we want to continue to market with mailers and so forth. I will be quite frank. I wouldn't say that I would, dumb down what the client was saying, but until I listened, and I will say this wholeheartedly, until I listened to one of Dan Kennedy's Audible books, it made complete sense to me like 3 to 4 years ago. I forgot the time frame. And I was like, person is a genius, a mastermind. If you look what Dan Kennedy has accomplished in his lifetime. But, business owners that are in those types of markets, they still need to have a multi-channel marketing approach overall, where they are potentially still advertising in, something like a Valpak, right, which is mailers. People get coupons, potentially advertising, I don't know, in Clipper magazines. And I'm sure if familiar with a Clipper magazine may be, but they need to have that multi-channel marketing approach. So now, getting back to what we're talking about here when it comes to social media marketing, take it back to the basics. It doesn't need to be too overcomplicated for you. Maybe you're wondering, well, how can I do it within my budget if we can't bring on somebody like Jarod and Socialtopia, which is fine. If you're just starting off, maybe you're on year 1, year 2, you just don't have the budget allocated to spend on having somebody do that for you. Let's start with these 3 key points to simplify your content marketing strategy for the new year. Okay? Number 1, simplify your strategy. Focus on creating quality content that really aligns with the following: your business goals. Who are you trying to resonate with? Who's your client avatar? Okay? Remember, here I'm going to say it. It's about pushing out more content this year in 2024. I honestly will say that I used to be that it's not about the quantity, but the quality. You can still produce content on a daily or weekly basis if you set a time aside to get that content out to your public. There are free tools. There are tools that are cost effective that you can use if you're looking to edit video content, or you can use, or you can use tools and templates in Canva, which is very cost effective. And if you're running a general contracting business, chances are you can afford those small recurring monthly fees. It's not going to kill you. And that goes number 2, leverage technology. Now, when I say leverage technology, I'm saying use technology, both old and new, to evaluate campaign performance. So based off of what your goals are, who your audiences are, use new technologies combined with old technologies to launch this type of strategy. Third and lastly, this kind of ties in to what we're talking about in doubling down your content in the new year. Consistency. A big word. I'm sure we hear it time and time again. And it goes hand in hand with social media and our efforts. Consistency is key. Consistent creation of content will not only help in building your brand's authority, but it will improve your visibility and who interacts with your content. Those are my 3 key tips to help simplify your strategy in the new year. Let's talk about this. Where should you be spending your money? That's quite obvious, right? Maybe not. I'm going to take a deeper dive into paid ads during episode 2. So if you're new to the show, and chances are you are, this is episode 1. If you can do me 2 huge favors. For starters, if you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, or you're coming across this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button to follow our channel and stay up to date of every podcast, which will be released on a weekly basis. Second, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, make sure to do me a favor and hit that follow button. Now, the biggest thing anyone can do for me is to spread the word of our podcast, of this podcast. That would be the hugest favor you can do for me and my brand. And what I will give back to you week after week are bite-sized nuggets of value. That's my goal overall for this podcast, is to hit those 4 buckets, talk about marketing, talk about business, talk about how it ties into fitness and wellness, and again, lastly, what I said already, marketing, and how you can apply some marketing efforts, if not all these marketing efforts, for your brand and for your business. We'll see you on episode number 2.